Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be on the test server before it closes because we have got a new Void Legendary coming to the game in JINGWONG, which is always a massive deal because Void Legendaries are the most valuable and most sought after, the most impactful champions in the game, the toughest to acquire. So we are going to show you how the champion compares to other Void Legendaries in the game, and then we'll cover all of the basic stuffs that we do in a champion guide, like how to build them, the Masteries, and then what I think about them, would I change anything, their grades, and give you full context in this new Void Legendary JINGWONG. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so JINGWONG is going to be in the newest faction, the Shadowkin, and then right here on the left side, and the HP scaling legendary, that is Void Affinity right here. So first of all, let's go over the base stats and the kit to get a general overview of this guy. We've got the base stats, pretty normal. He does scale with HP. You're going to want good HP on him. His HP is fine. It's actually, the base HP is actually exactly the same as Sir Nick, 22.8. The attack is completely irrelevant. You don't need any of that in this guy. The base defense of 1100 is okay. The speed is good of 103. Crit rate, crit damage don't really matter. I mean, you could build him as a hybrid to get a little bit of damage out of him, but you're not going to be building him as like a nuker or prioritizing damage on him. And then he gets 30 resistance and 20 accuracy, so 50 for the bases. Nothing really stands out of note in the base stats. They're typically what you would expect them to be on an HP champion like this. Then as we dive into the kit, the A1 is going to be attack one enemy and transfers a random debuff from this champion to the target. And then the multiplier on this ability is going to be a 0.23 times HP. Now, HP scaling multipliers are always going to sound low, but HP is by far the highest stat you could typically get on a champion, so it actually works out well, and it's still pretty decent even though it sounds crazy low. And then when I say scaling with HP, some people get confused sometimes, so I want to clarify. I'm not talking about scaling with enemy max HP, like a Cold Heart or a Royal Guard or something, or a Septimus. It's scaling with this champion's HP. It's not based on the opponent's HP and doing proportional damage like Royal Guard would, for example. So anyway, 0.23 for the multiplier on the A1. For reference, I like to use Sir Nicholas because he's kind of that standard hybrid damage support HP scaling champion that has been in the game forever, so people are a little bit more familiar with him. And in relation to Sir Nicholas, he has a 0.25 scale on his A1 with exactly the same base HP. So the A1, pretty comparable to Sir Nick in terms of damage you can expect, but we're also going to transfer a random debuff from the champion as a little bit of an added bonus. It's not going to hit super hard, so it definitely needs some sort of cool utility on it. Transferring a debuff is nice. It's not going to be perfectly consistent because he's not always going to have a debuff on him. But we'll get into my conclusion on the champion and what I would change a little bit later here in terms of his design as a champion and what I think makes sense and what is good and what isn't. Then we've got an A2 that we can book to a 2-turn cooldown, which is cool. You don't see that very often in Raid, but it's going to be attack with one enemy. We can book it up to a 100% chance of increasing the duration of 2 random debuffs on the target by 1 turn. And then we're also going to place a block active skills debuff for 1 turn if the target is under a decreased accuracy or a decreased crit damage. And he actually places both of those on the A3 right here, which is going to be a multi-hitter AoE, which is also cool. You don't see that super often in the game. We can book it up to a 100% chance of placing both those aforementioned decreased accuracy and decreased crit damage debuffs for 2 turns. Then we're also going to get a strengthen buff on this champion for 2 turns, and that scales with HP as well. So we're dealing damage every single turn, and then the multiplier on the A2 is going to be a 0.35 times HP, so it hits a lot harder than the A1, 0.35 instead of 0.23 on a 2-turn cooldown here. And then on the AoE, it's going to be a 0.14, but it is a multi-hitter, so it's going to be basically a 0.28 times HP. And then for comparison, Sir Nick's AoE is a 0.25, so 0.28 instead of 0.25, gonna hit a little bit harder than Sir Nick basically here with the AoE in comparison to Sir Nick's AoE. Then we also have a passive that's actually pretty good. I'm going to be immune to all of the CC debuffs: Fear, True Fear, Freeze, Provoke, Sleep, Stun, and Petrify. And then whenever one of these debuffs is placed on an ally, remove it and replace it with a block debuffs for 2 turns. The cooldown is going to be 4 turns on that when fully booked. And then we get an aura of ally HP in all battles by 33%, which is a very solid aura for sure. It's all battles and it's a good percentage. So that is going to be a wrap up of the kit. Now let's talk about the building and masteries and booking process and all of that, so that if you have him and you're putting him together, some things to consider. Okay, so here is the JINGWONG that I've got built on the test server. And when we're thinking about what sets to use on this guy, we want to get lots of HP and speed and accuracy, because we're going to be doing damage every turn, and we're also going to be getting a lot of value out of placing debuffs and getting good accuracy and HP on him, because obviously he scales with HP and has a pretty decent base. So as we dive into the gear, we'll start with the banner and work our way up. You're typically going to want a main stat of accuracy on the banner, because you need good accuracy on him to get lots of value out of everything he is doing there. And then you want a good blend of speed and HP and defense as these substats. The amulet, you're probably going to go HP most time on him, unless you're building it for something specific like a hybrid damage dealer. Then you maybe go crit damage and then use some crit rate or crit damage gloves to synergize with that if you're going for a more Cernic hybrid damage dealer support build. But for the way I'm building him as a support and utility, go with HP as the amulet, and then obviously HP on the ring. You're trying to get as much HP and defense as possible. For the gear up here, yeah, you could go HP percent boots, but I think you want to crank out turns with this guy. Place debuffs, keep the accuracy and stuff suppressed of your opponents, and cycle through on blocking the CCs because of the passives and stuff. So I think like a relentless high speed, something like that, could be kind of fun on him. And then obviously on all this stuff, you're going to be going for as much HP as you can get, along with hitting some accuracy and resistance along the way. So both of those are on HP, and then we're also taking advantage of the immortal set to get even more. The top ones are pretty easy to go by. Again, HP, speed, accuracy, and he'll end up being just fine. If you want to see the total stats, I will take myself down so you can compare if you're building this guy. This is what mine ended up looking like with Relentless and Immortal, with these stats to go along with it. We've got good enough accuracy to land in whatever content we're doing for PvE, and then enough resistance to get some decent value out of that. We're not really going for a damage dealer build. We want high speed to cycle through with Relentless and get a good amount of HP on him to help scale with that and take advantage of the good base HP that he has. Then for the booking process, if you're spending books on this guy, so he's going to take 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 3 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So if you are booking this guy, all the cooldowns are pretty impactful except for the A1. The A1, you're only getting damage. It's pretty lame, so spend your books kind of slower, 1 or 2 at a time. And if you could save 1 or 2 books on the A1 via good RNG, no problem doing so there. You mainly just want to get the cooldowns that you got on the A2, the A3, and the passive. Then for the masteries, I would probably go the route of building him as some sort of a support. Again, you can build him as a damage dealer. He's just not going to be out there slapping like crazy. So I would just make him a really good support champion to help kind of just be there as a punching bag to debuff accuracy, to fulfill a role in high resistance teams. He could be pretty handy because you're going to lower their accuracy and really pair with that. So yeah, I went with the oppressor here as well for the tier 6, because he's gonna be placing a lot of debuffs, transferring debuffs, and doing that every turn, so he can really crank up that turn meter fill rate, especially with a relentless set. He's gonna be cycling through super often, and then counterattacks are pretty decent on him as well for things like retribution, because he's gonna be obviously transferring debuffs, so you can constantly kind of keep himself cleansed by doing so. But remember to kind of build the masteries based on how you're using the champion. But this was kind of a normal setup of masteries that I thought would be pretty decent on him. And now as we dive into showing him in action, I want to showcase him in 12-6 Nightmare, because he actually is a viable Nightmare campaign farmer. And then one thing worth noting there, you see his AI prioritizing that AoE double hitter that places the decreased accuracy and the decreased crit damage. Now, I did not build him for a Nightmare campaign farmer build. This was a support build, so it's not going to be fast. It's probably going to be like a minute 30, a minute 40 or something like that. But you could build him if you wanted to be your Nightmare campaign farmer. You could build him with like the Helm Smasher passive and build him with some crit rate and some crit damage, and he would probably be just fine and be able to clear it in probably like 45 seconds to a minute or so and be not an amazing but a viable Nightmare campaign farmer. But even as a support build, he is able to do it, as you'll see right here. But yeah, I'm probably not going to be the most amazing thing to use him for, but at least he is capable of it. Anytime you've got a champion that scales with a toughness stat like defense or HP, and they've got some kind of self-sustain built in. It's an opportunity they might be able to do some things as your Nightmare campaign farmer here. And then after this, we'll talk about maybe where the best places to use him would be, what kind of teams he's going to make sense, the overall grading and all of that, and then we'll talk about if I would change anything on him or not. So yeah, and also when you're using somebody as a campaign farmer in Relentless set, you're gonna have a lot of RNG affecting your runs, so it's gonna be pretty different here depending on the run, because Relentless set adds a lot of RNG in there. But yeah, he's perfectly fine. He's not even getting close to dying. He's got a lot of sustain, especially if you get him built up with decent enough toughness. And lowering their crit damage is gonna help a lot as well. Makes him get hit a lot less hard. Alrighty, and there we have it. So it did take a long time, but you can see that he is able to do it, and may even be a candidate for more like solo content or type stuff because of the self-sustain and him having a pretty sturdy kit, especially placing that self-strengthen that he can do with the A3 there. And I'll touch on if he has any utility in the arena. I'm on the test server, so I can't really show you a whole lot of arena testing in battles, or I would be happy to. But I can talk about how I would maybe use him. So in the arena, he's probably going to be a decent candidate, not S tier, but decent for like high resistance compositions where you've got a Duchess or something built in high resistance, because he is going to lower the accuracy of all the enemies on a pretty consistent basis with a pretty good cooldown. He's also going to make a defense go second team nice because of that passive, where makes things immune to all of those CC effects. Remember right there where it says whenever one of those CCs is placed on an ally, remove them and place a block debuff, which can obviously be super cool on a defensive team where you go second and the other team is going to have an opportunity to place some of those debuffs. So you pair him in a situation where you've got a tanky defense go second type team that's trying to be a pain for your opponent to eliminate off the battlefield, and he will help your resistance team by lowering all the accuracy and help you go second by dealing with some of those CC debuffs. And then he'll also keep transferring stuff if he does get debuffed and all of that. So I could see him having some utility in a team setup like that, but he's not going to be great for like a go first, a nuke type team, high speed team, and he's probably not going to see a whole lot of play up at the crazy high tiers when you get close to like platinum and stuff. So alrighty, now let's go over the grades and how I would kind of compare this guy on the tier list compared to other champions. So first of all, we've got Shadowkin, Legendary, Void, an overall grade of 7.5 on the tier list algorithm. So all right, but definitely not incredible. Book value of 7, Clan Boss, not gonna be super great in that area of the game. The arena, I mean, he's decent because he's got the ability to help high resistance teams, and obviously anytime you can kind of remove those CC debuffs on a defense team is super handy. The XP farm, he's not gonna be incredible, but he is actually capable of doing some Nightmare campaign farming, so not bad. Faction War is actually gonna be really good for the Shadowkin because he's Void Affinity, so he'll never be hitting weak or be getting hit strong. And then actually their stage 21, the last boss, is the red crypt boss. So it's going to be that one that ignores defense and smashes through you. So you need high HP teams. He's got an HP aura, and then he's also got very high like incentive to scale up his HP while bringing a lot of utility there in Faction War. So he's actually gonna be very good for the Shadowkin. Doom Tower, Dragon, all this stuff kind of par for the course. High HP champions are good in the Ice Golem as well, because the Ice Golem ignores defense just like the red Faction Crypt boss. He'll be fine in some of this stuff. Nothing super noteworthy on the keeps or anything like that. So the grades are all right. And he kind of just comes out as a decent 7.5. And then this is my most up-to-date Void Legendary Desirability tier list that I like to do over on stream with my chat. So this is not just my opinion. This is my viewers and stuff giving their input on the desirability of champions is how we kind of grade it. And you can see here that JINGWONG is kind of down there in the bottom tier. Not one of the most desired Void Legendaries to get on your account because really his best utility is probably going to be Faction Wars and some like defensive tag team arena teams. So that's mostly his utility, which makes him nowhere near like your Krisk, Warlord, Cardio, and some of those higher tier Void legendaries. Which means that the community can tend to get a little bit upset in situations like this because it dilutes the champion pool, because whenever you get new Void legendaries added to the pool that are not as impactful as those top ones, it makes it mathematically harder to acquire those top ones, because now when you summon a Void legendary, your odds of getting one of those is lessened because now JINGWONG is added to that pool as well. So is there anything that I would change about JINGWONG and his design here as a champion? I think he makes sense as a champion for the Shadowkin faction. I think it's a cool role that he fills within their faction crypt and the Shadowkin theme. I would definitely change the A1. I would give this a little bit a more of like a guaranteed value. I would add something to this, like attack one enemy and do something, and transfer a random debuff from this champion onto the target, because transferring a random debuff is not going to be something super consistent that you get value out of, and it's only a single hitter that scales off of HP, so it's really kind of lame if it doesn't have guaranteed value to do something. He's a Void legendary. His abilities should be good, so I would definitely adjust the A1 a little bit. Then for the A2, I mean, it's a 2-turn cooldown, so it's tough to buff this because you could make it broken really fast. I really don't have a problem with this. Maybe I would increase the multiplier a little bit. He's a Void Lego. Yeah, like with this being a 2-turn cooldown, adjusting this has a potential to really break things. So I would probably just increase the multiplier on this one a little bit. And then for this one, the A3 is mostly fine. Maybe also place a strengthen on all allies. That'd be super cool. I mean, because you got abilities like Lady Kimmy's here, where you've got like you're decreasing accuracy and speed of all enemies, and you're also increasing accuracy and speed of all allies, doing lots of crazy stuff. So I don't think it would be super broken if he placed a strengthen on all allies. I think it could synergize with a lot of super cool teams. You're decreasing their accuracy and damage while also strengthening your team. I think that would make him a lot more desirable as a Void Lego. The passive I'm mostly fine with. I think this is pretty impactful. And if you buff this, you've got an opportunity to really do some crazy things and make it broken. So really just the A1, and then maybe a slight multiplier adjustment on the A2, and then maybe make the strengthen the whole team instead of just himself. And then I think he'd be in a pretty decent place. That would definitely bump him up a little bit without making him broken or something. So I think he could use a little bit of love, and all in all, I would tend to agree with the community on this one and where they kind of place him as of his current state in the game and where I would rank him. And remember, over on ChoflyElite.com, I've got the new tier list live, and I just rolled this out last week, so I'm working on getting it up to date and a little bit more fleshed out, but that is right there. Remember, if you haven't checked that out yet, it might be a fun resource to look at, and I'll work on getting all the new champions added into there and stuff, and make them clickable, so you can pull up the videos and stuff that I do on all these champions right there on that tier list. But anyway, let me know what you think down below. I always enjoy your input as well, especially on new champions, so I can get them graded accurately on the tier list. So if you disagree with me, I appreciate that feedback as well. So that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.